Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Inside the Mirror podcast. I'm your host, Kyle David. After 100-something episodes, if you didn't know, well, now you know. Back today with another friend. As you know, this is how we do it. This is my friend Emily. Emily and I connected through work, actually. Some of y'all know I work for Leader, and so we connected talking about work things, and we just became fast friends because we see the world through a very similar lens, and we see people through a very similar lens. And you know me, when I connect with people that I think love people, they're usually my lifelong friends. So I'm just snatching up friends over here and sharing them with you. Emily, I won't rant forever, but I'm going to pass the ball to you and let you kind of introduce yourself and give us kind of the, quick rundown origin story of you and your journey, and give us a little bit about you.
Sure. Well, thank you first, Kyle, for having me on today. I'm really excited to talk. As you said, we connected and became fast friends. So looking forward to our conversation today and continuing to discuss what we've discussed. For everyone out there, I'm Emily. I am an HR director at a startup called Concentrated Active Ingredients and Flavors, or Caif. My HR journey was a little different, as every HR journey is. So I went to school for engineering, actually starting out, and then ended up going to English literature and writing. So very different. And when I met a group of international students and was hanging out with them, I knew I wanted to do something in business, and I knew I wanted to have a career where I would be working with people. So ended up going and getting my master's degree from the University of South Carolina, and kind of started my HR journey with no HR experience, working for several large companies, gaining experience, going to different locations, and then finally ended up in South Carolina. My family's here. My partner works here. So we came back after living in New York for a while. And I really kind of got my, working for those big companies, you kind of get lost in, what is really the purpose of this? And I started working for some smaller companies. My dad owns his own business. So I've always watched him have employees leave and always come back, and I'm always going, okay, like how do we do that as a business, and why does it matter? So as I started working for smaller companies, when I came back to South Carolina, I really kind of started understanding, the impact that people have and how lost it had gotten in those bigger companies that I had been in. So I worked for a food manufacturer in South Carolina, and then I moved into a road construction manufacturer. And that's where I really found my passion for people. I had such an incredible manager. Him and I still connect all the time. And our big thing is people matter. Without people, you wouldn't have a business. And I think that gets lost in today's world. And I really started to hone in on the purpose I have in HR, that I learned in my master's degree, but really kind of took hold of, I'm really here to be a protector of the business, but also the people, because the business needs to understand that without people, they wouldn't have a business, and vice versa. So I really started honing my craft in there and got the opportunity of a lifetime to basically start my own HR department and help start this company and try to build a culture. It was hard to pass up. So I took the challenge, and it has been a challenge. Let me tell you, there's nothing without it. But I think we're building a really great team right now. I think the biggest challenge I have is, when you deal with entrepreneurs, sometimes, it's always the thought of like, we have to get this off the ground. We have to get this moving. And you go, yes, that's very important. But also don't forget the people who are getting you there. And so, my big thing in HR, as I've continued on in my journey, is really going, we've gotten lost somewhere in the fray, somewhere, and HR really has the challenge, especially now, to really take that seat at the table and go, we're not just paperwork. We have to think about how we actually use our people. Are we utilizing their skills correctly? Are we utilizing their talents? Are we tending the garden? I've seen that a lot, where everyone's like, oh, we'll just replace them with someone else. And it's, wait, hold on. Are are we having those conversations with them? They're people at the end of the day. So I think HR has the ultimate challenge, and that's kind of what I'm trying to tackle in my HR career is making sure the businesses understand the people and making sure we're utilizing talent the right way. Because I'm sure we've all had those conversations where someone says something and you're like, I completely disagree with you. And then you understand where they're coming from. And you're like, oh, wait, my bad. That was a really poor reaction. So just having those conversations. So that's me. And that's kind of a little bit about myself and my background and what I try to do here in HR.
I love it. If the people that know me can hear right now why we're friends, right? Because I'm so passionate, and you kind of, I think I've told you a little bit about my experience in the corporate world too, right? Working for massive corporations. I was actually, this is interesting. So day before yesterday, my manager asked me to write down like my why. Like, why do you do what you do? Why do we exist, right? Like, what is your passion for people? And it was just interesting to, write down your story a little bit and look back at it. And like you said, realize like there, and I don't blame certain people, right? Because you have to build a business and there are expectations, but yeah, you said it twice. You don't have anything, whether it's a business or like whatever organization you run, you have nothing if you don't have people. So the fact that we don't have like the fact that the number one priority of every business in the universe isn't people blows my mind. It just blows my mind. It's the most ridiculous thing in my mind on the planet in business. It blows my mind. I'm like, how is that not our number one priority yesterday, today, and always? Because that's, again, like that's the only thing that we have to build a business upon. The idea is nothing. So anyways, I could go on a whole rant there, but I'll digress. But I would like, as you are, I think it's an interesting time, and I would love your thoughts because we've come out of, right, the industrial kind of age where people were treated like cogs in a machine because they could be, but now people have massive leverage now with the internet, and where businesses now people now realize, oh, I don't have to just show up and be a cog in the machine. I have a lot of options here. So the world's moved quickly, especially with COVID and remote work, internet, all the things. And you've been in it for a while. Like, what are your thoughts on now that the leverage people have now kind of over a business? Because businesses used to have the ultimate leverage. We have the money. If you don't show up and do the job, then you have no money and you had no other options. But because of the options, people have massive amounts of leverage now against the business. What are your thoughts on that type of leverage people now have and what you're seeing from being in HR? And also like the conversation of how can we now as businesses pull back and reevaluate what's our relationship with our people and what should it look like moving forward?
So that's a really great question. So I think, I like that the employee has leverage. I think it's really good. I think it's been a wake-up call for a lot of businesses, and I think it needed to happen. I will say I am a little concerned that businesses are going to start hanging it over people's heads again, going, nope, you have to go back into the office because you have no choice. Otherwise, I'll terminate you in a recession. Nobody wants that. And I will say, I think that is if your business is doing that, you need to question that business. And I'll get to that in a minute, but I think it's really great to see that employees have fought back. And I think it's really important. I think as a business, you should go, okay, why are they pushing back? And that why is going to be, why not? One of the things I think you've probably seen, and I've seen is when I come home after a long day of work, I have no desire to clean my house or do the yard work or do any of that. And, and so we have this, when we get home, we're exhausted and then we're trying to keep up with everything and it just compounds and we get exhausted and we go to work and we're exhausted because we're thinking about all the things we didn't do over the weekend or at home. So I'm glad that people are standing up and saying something. And I am proud of a lot of the HR people who are standing up and going, yeah, we've been telling you this for a long time. And I think as a business leader, you should be questioning, okay, what is my relationship with my employees? Why is the world changing? I gave a talk a while ago where I said, the purpose for work has changed. It used to be that it was a survival mode. So back in the day, you were planting crops to survive. Now we've gotten to a point where we have the internet, we can work remotely. Our situations at work have changed. We don't go and work in the office and then not bring it home. It comes home with us most of the time. So our purpose has changed. We have everything we need. We live in probably one of the most rich societies. So yes, things are going to change. They're going to be different as it goes. I think people obviously change is a big factor. Like, no, we've always done it this way. We've always made money this way. Like, change is scary because it can mean failure, and people are afraid to fail, which I don't think you should be. I think businesses should really be looking at this and going, okay, like, let's actually look at the numbers. I think a lot of businesses are going, but if everyone's not in the office, then we really have people aren't working, people aren't doing things. We're really concerned. And I'm going, let's look at the productivity numbers. Let's actually look at the data and see how productive. Are your employees happier? Are things still getting done? Are you still making money? If those are the things and they're working less and you're making more, why are you worried about it? Like, what is really, like, ask the why. Like, why are you actually worried about it? Is it because you're insecure with your management skills? Yeah, maybe. And that's okay. That's okay. We all get to a point in our careers where we get the imposter syndrome or the, like, I'm not really sure how it's going to work.
Yep.
And I tell people, all my leaders all the time, like, sometimes I don't know if what I'm telling you is going to work. I'm giving you the best advice I have at the time with the knowledge that I have. And I'm going to tackle each bit by bit. And I know at the end of the day that I can handle it and we can get through it. Now, I understand there are some businesses, especially in manufacturing, they have to be there on site. So I do think that there is some value with, hey, we want to support our manufacturing staff and let them know we're here. But I think that there are ways around it where, you can either do hybrid models, or you as the leaders, hey, all leaders need to come to the manufacturing site at least once a week and, talk to the team and let them know you're here. And I think that there are ways to go about it that businesses should really look into, especially with the recession coming. I think one of the biggest things I've told my managers is that people are miserable coming into work, because they're having to pay for gas or they're having to do all these different things. It's like, so let's find a way where we can make it fair for everyone, whether it's some hybrid work, whether it's, you pay your manufacturing staff a little bit more to come into the office and, and so that way you're giving them that value to show them that, like, you care of the people that want to come in the office, you pay them a little bit more, and the people that don't, you kind of keep them where they're at, and then that's the choice. But I think it's important to really find that balance. And yes, it's going to be different and it's going to be difficult, but businesses should not be afraid of difficult. And I think that that's the biggest thing, is to really, this is a time to understand why the purpose of work has changed, why your employees' mentalities change. Because if you can't, if you as a business can't continue to adapt, I heard something really great the other day, which was, if you're Simon Sinek said it, if you're, I love him, he is so fantastic. But if your business is a technology business and you say we want to be the best in technology, it's never going to work, because technology is always going to change. So you constantly have to adapt, and you can say that, but you constantly have to adapt. And I think as businesses, we have to adapt to a market, but that also includes your people, because they're also feeling that market. And I think that's lost in a lot of businesses. So hopefully that answered your question.
Oh yeah, it answered my question, but then it gives me more questions. But so you nailed it, right? And I think this is obviously my own personal opinion, that the number one strategy you could have as a business is to be intentional with your people, because the more you meet with your people and hear what they need and help them become who they need to be and who they want to be, there, you don't have to worry about this, right? That's where I think I struggle with businesses that are like, well, we don't know what people are doing. It doesn't feel like they're productive when they're not at work. And I'm like, well, there's a reason that you don't trust them, right? So it's your responsibility as leaders to go find out, how can I make this a relationship where you have what you need? And then when you give your people what they need and you empower them and they know you care, you don't have to worry about their performance, right? They will
Yeah.
want to perform for people that motivate them and care about them. I
Yeah.
think that's like the missing link.
And the crazy thing is there's all this data to support it, and yet
Yeah.
we don't
It's
do
not a
anything
pie in
with
the
it.
sky
And
idea.
I will say another thing that I've heard recently. So everyone out there, there are some really great HR people on Instagram, and one of them today, said the intent on which your managers approach things matters. Um,
100%.
so if you come at them with shame and try to understand them and just, I don't understand why you're doing this, and I don't agree with why you think this way, you've just lost your employee.
Mm-hmm.
You've completely just defeated the purpose of what you're trying to. But if you come at it with the intent of, I'm really trying to understand so that we can have a better working relationship, so that we can move this forward and we can both accomplish our goals, it's a totally different conversation.
Uh-huh. This is my own opinion and just from my own experience, and just my father and I have always talked leadership. He's a leader. We've always talked about how do you engage people, not just in work, right? But like the way you engage someone as a leader to your employees should be the same as you engage like your family members and other relationships. There's no different, right? Like when there's conflict or when there's issues, the power of listening and understanding and trying to move towards resolution and saying, how can I be better? What did I do? Let me own my part. What is your right? It's the same thing. I think I would be interested to hear your opinion. My opinion is we've tried to think of like the work and person employee relationship is like this unique thing where I'm like, no, it's just a human relationship. Just treat it like you would like the way you talk to your partner, the way you deal with your partner when there's struggles or when you're trying to be better. It's another person. Let's not overcomplicate it, right? People have feelings. They want to be cared for. They want to be heard. We do too. I do too. Leaders do too. Business owners do too. So we all have the same end goal. It's to like feel heard and understood, and then be able to have a relationship that can be dynamic and beneficial for both of us. What do you think about that? Do you think we've overcomplicated, like, well, this business, people in the workplace, we have to do this, and then at home we would operate differently? Do you think that we should just treat people the same way as people, no matter where they're at?
I mean, I think so. I think, historically it was never question your boss, never do any
Yeah.
of that. And I don't know why that was. And I think it was just kind of the social constructs at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is room for decorum. I think in a business you need to have that decorum because you're all kind of coming to this one space and you're all having to work together, whether some people like each other or not. So there
Sure.
does need to be a common middle ground. But I do really think that yes, like they're people too. Like we go to work, and for whatever reason, a lot of people treat people like robots, and whether that is just it can be a human reaction to I'm not sure what to say or what to do, or I feel like I need to be the manager, and as the manager I need to be tough and strong and do the things that I always think a manager should do. And I think we have to challenge ourselves as leaders to say, is this really the right way to manage your group? And it can be hard. It can be hard mentally to sit there and say, well, this is how it's always been done.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm going to challenge myself to think outside the box as a
Mm-hmm.
leader and determine what's really best for my team. And I think that's hard for a lot of people. I know
Sure.
it's been hard for me, where I I want people to be able to work remotely and everything, and my CEO is not necessarily keen on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm having to think outside the box and just go, he might not, but how do we bring that together? And I don't fall into the trap of saying like, okay, yeah, you're my boss and I'll just do it.
Mm-hmm.
How do I, and I do think that, um, we need that common ground, but we're people. Like
Yeah.
we have feelings. Like how many times has someone said something to you and you're like, I hate them because of the way they said it,
Right.
or but then you've gone right back and done it. And so I think
Oh yeah.
it's important for us to realize, and the most important lesson I've learned is always ask, why do you see it that way? Like,
Mm-hmm.
explain why you see it that way, or walk me through your thought process on this to get a better understanding.
That's
Because
good.
the truth is going to lie somewhere in the middle with your thoughts and their thoughts, and then you'll connect and you'll build that relationship, and it'll be even stronger
Mm-hmm.
than it was before.
You're in a unique place also as an HR director because you're basically the advocate in between, right? Like the employees and then the leadership. And I think one thing that I have tried to work on a lot, because obviously I have very strong feelings and opinions because I'm very pro people, but I've had to realize, right, we do have to have, and you kind of mentioned it, there is a large amount of empathy that we need to have for leaders and CEOs and folks like that, right? I think because they're unique in they have a lot of pressure, there's a lot of stress, right, that they carry versus what the employees carry. So there's a unique thing they have to deal with there. And like you said, right, we're having to change their paradigm. It's not necessarily always their fault that they don't see work in this way that you and I may do, because they may have decades of doing something a different way, right? So we're having to help change their paradigm. So there does have to be empathy, I think, to be more advocates of them also, is that we as employees or as just as people or directors, as we're trying to fight for people, there has to be also empathy for the leadership, that they may have done this the way they were trained 30 years ago, and that's just how they've lived. And then within a year or two, we're asking them to totally see things different. So I think my thought, and I'll be curious your thought. I think empathy from both sides is where we're going to see a lot of the fruit and the solution coming from. What are your thoughts? Because
Yeah.
you obviously have worked with your father and your CEO. You've worked with a lot of leaders.
Yeah, I think so. And that really is going to take a lot on HR to really step up to that seat at the table.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is, in my mind, an HR person can influence the business by helping both sides
Mm-hmm.
understand each other and bridging those gaps and building those relationships
Yep.
either way. And you it is terrifying, I will tell you, to
Sure.
say no to a CEO. But if you
I
have
bet.
a reasoning or the numbers, or here's why I think this way, you can still have those really strong conversations that at least will may ease the tensions
Mm-hmm.
that there may be. But and it's, I hear you, HR people. The pandemic was rough. Get ready for the
Sure.
next level. It's
Oh.
just preparing us for this. So I do think that we as HR people we have to be I don't want to say babysitters, but
Mm-hmm.
for lack of a better word, the babysitters, the mediator between
Yeah.
business and the people, because everyone wants the same thing. There's just two
Yep.
different ways of getting there,
Yeah.
and we
You
have
guys
to
are
bridge that gap.
you guys have this is a unique time in the world, and especially for HR. And I know because I literally talk to HR people all the time for a living, and I talk to executives. So I hear the both, and I understand both. And I think one thing, and I'm curious what you think on this. A lot of my conversations with executives recently has been trying to help them understand, especially as we go into a recession, that your biggest advantage right now over your competition is your people initiatives. The way you treat people over the next 12, 24, 36 months will be the determining factor on how you come out of the recession, right? If you double down on your people in this time, I think your business is set up for massive success on the other side, because recessions are cyclical, right? We've seen them throughout history. So I'm trying to help them understand with as much empathy as possible from a business perspective. Even if you don't have a deep love and care for people, which sucks, but not everyone does. Let's think, like you said, let's think strategically. Let's look at what is the best strategy for your business right now, right? Like, what will differentiate you from your competition? The number one thing is, how can you double down on your people right now who execute your business on the day to day? How do you help them be in a better place, to put your business in a better place, to give you a one up on your competition through a recession? And it's starting to click, which is super encouraging, because when I put it in those terms of what's your strategy for the recession? And they're like, well, we don't know, right? We're trying to figure it out. We're trying to cut costs. We're taking things off the table, all those things. Everyone's doing that, is my kind of rebuttal to that is, I understand that, but I talk to executives all day. They're all doing that. So again, you're not differentiating yourself. The one thing that a lot of leaders are not doing is doubling down on their people strategy. So I think that your business as well, specifically, Caif is in a unique place, because if y'all double down on your people strategy with you in that seat, you guys could hockey stick out of this in a wild way. Do you think is that how you're thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. My thought process is, okay, they may stay here through this recession, but we've already seen the minute they hate something, they will leave. So the minute the economy turns good again, if you're not doubling down on your people now, they will go.
Yeah.
Once that recession's over, because like you said, it's cyclical. It will end at some point. And I do think, having a great culture, people want to be a part of that. We've seen that in droves. So they will stay. They'll tell their friends about it. They will put in the extra work to make sure it works, because they have the buy-in for it. And I think, while AI and all of that and technology is great, what's the one thing we've always seen? They always said like, well, HR would be an AI thing, and it still may be, but there's something about that we even saw in the pandemic. When people couldn't talk to people, people got depressed. They went crazy for some of them. And I think we still need, we are at the end of the day humans, and we may live in an Xbox 360 world, but we still have Atari's brains.
That's a great way to say it.
Yeah,
I've never heard that.
and we need that interaction. And so I think that we have to think about ourselves as humans. What do we want? We're all going through this together. Your CEO is suffering. Your lowest employee is suffering. And so you work a way to find it together. Because I do think that if you have the right people, if you have people who are motivated and have that buy-in, they're going to be thinking of other ways that we can get you out there. And I would say I'll make the analogy, it's kind of like marketing. We didn't think influencers would come in and be as big as they are, but now the biggest companies are run by influencers. Like if you I love All In said Kim Kardashian. Look at Kim Kardashian. She's built a huge empire just based off of her image, and she's going to probably beat out all the box stores that have been around forever because of her image. And I think that that's an important thing, is what are you doing to differentiate? Well, if you look at the influencers, they're differentiating with their personalities and they're winning. So how do you as a business do that? Through your people.
This is maybe a little bit of a backtrack, but I actually just thought of this. You've mentioned in our conversations before this and here about your father and the business that he had, and he's right. This is right. So that would be previous to the pandemic and all of this new way of thinking. But it sounds like he understood the importance of caring for his people, because you've mentioned it several times. Can you unpack a little bit? I'm curious to hear more about this man and his approach, because it sounds like it impacted you pretty heavily.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so my dad, this has been a family business since my great grandfather.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's been the family for a while. And so my dad, grew up working in the plant. I grew up working in the meat plant. And I will say it's a tough business. Meat packing, a small meat packing company is a tough business. But it definitely taught me a lot. But, one of the things that my dad taught me is he's like, there are people like me, and he'll sit there, he'll go on the line. He doesn't sit in his office at all. In fact, he texted me this morning, was like, I'm on my way to the plant, like gonna go do some inventory, and some of it's because it is hard to find really good people these days, especially for a meat packing company. Like everyone wants the white collar jobs. But, growing up, his thing was, I'm not gonna do, if I can't do the work, why would I ask someone else to do the work? And just be right there with them on the line. I mean, here I was at like 15 years old, right there on the line, learning how to do everything, how to pack, how to weigh, how to put the right spices in, and how to make the packaging look good and how to do the pricing. And, so for me, watching him jump in and watching our employees who would come in, leave for $1, and then realize that they had it pretty good, come back. And um, one of the things that he did, he was, because of all the rising costs, and because of the overhead and several different regulations that are going on in the meat industry, he was having trouble keeping people in the door. And I just kind of said, I know this is really odd, but what if you just have 50 people on the roster and just let them show up whenever they want to work? And as long as you have X amount of people on the line,
Wow.
why not do it? And he was like, that's not the way we've always done it. And he's like, but I'm desperate, so let's try it. And it's worked out really well for him. Some days he'll have everyone there, some days he'll have a few people there, but he's got people there, and they figure it out, they work. It's not the most perfect, setup all the time.
Sure.
But he has people who they're like, hey, my sister wants to work like 1 or 2 days a week. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. So he'll have
I
an extra
like it.
person sometimes. And I think, one of the things that I have worked at the plant and seen people come and go, and they've always said, he makes me feel like a person. If I do something wrong, if I make him angry, he'll give me a second chance. He'll try to hear me out. He'll understand my story. And they're like, even if he's super angry at me, he will tell me that he's not happy with me. He will just say, just go and get it done. If you need help, call me. And he just treats them like a person. And yes, there's people where we've had to terminate and they can't come
Sure.
back because of the things they've done. But
Sure.
he did it in a way, was like, look, you gave me no choice, and here's why. And we've had several discussions. I'm really sorry. It's just gonna have to be this way. Here's the number for the unemployment line. What can we do? And I think that's really influenced me, just seeing how he was like, they're people too. Like,
Yeah.
we're all here together. If we don't do this, the food doesn't get to the grocery store and then doesn't get on your table. So you should value these people because they are doing the work. And that was really influential for me. Just really seeing that, and just seeing people constantly come back and just go, it's not the most glamorous job in the world, but at least we have a really great boss. It's
That's
not the highest paying
huge.
job either. And I, I've watched him, and I love, working next to my dad. He's right there on the line with me. We have a machine breakdown. We're in there pulling out the plastic wrap and trying to figure it out. And, he's so hardworking. He has influenced me in that, like, he does not give up. Giving up is not in his mentality. There will always be a way to fix something, whether that includes duct tape and WD-40 or just a solution.
He sounds like an inspiring guy. I like the idea of just believing in people, right? And still treating them well, even if you have to let them go, right? Because then that's a reality too, right? Everyone can't stay forever. There's some times where it's not a right fit. But even treating people well on the way out, that's that I really respect, right? Because that shows a care for people. Of even when you can't help me, I still care about you. That's massive. I don't want. Go ahead.
No, it's huge. It
Yeah.
really makes it a difference, in people's lives. I had to do a layoff during COVID, and
Sure.
um, my HR leader and myself and the president, we all agreed. We said we don't want to do it, but we hooked them up with recruiters. We got them resume, help, and they were all like, it was not fun, but like, you didn't have to do that, and that was really appreciated. And those people still wanted to come work for us, later, and that was big, and told people about what we did. So it absolutely matters. You think about yourself, and that's where you get a lot of these answers.
That makes me think of whatever the quote is. I'm probably butcher it, but something like, people don't remember what you do, they remember how you made them feel.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I always think it's important to reflect on yourself a little bit when you think about making leadership decisions. Is, okay, when I go to someone's funeral, do I think about any of the things they have? No.
No.
But you think about them as a person, and that's kind of the reflection that I like to think about. Is, at the end of the day, if I was to die tomorrow, what do I want people to remember me for? And then, but as part of my why, which is I want to help people. So if at the end of the day, I've gotten to the point where I haven't helped anybody, then I really did not do my job correctly.
Dang, that's that's intense, but I think it's right, right? Like I think we get it going so fast. At least for me, I'm guilty. I get going so fast in life and work and family and friends and just the things that fill up our calendars that I am guilty of sometimes not thinking about, like, what did I do today to impact other people, right?
Yeah.
And if there's days where I definitely am not perfect at it, right? I love that what you're saying of like being aware of like how am I treating people? What am I doing to make sure that people know that they're valuable and that they are understood and that they're important, right? Like whether it's work or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're not always going to be perfect at it. There are
Sure.
absolutely days where we're all going to just not hit the mark, and that's
Mhm.
okay. We're human after all.
Mhm.
But I do think it's important. I do find myself caught up as well, and find those moments, like especially during vacation, to really reflect on, okay, like how am I really doing? And I think that's also a form of self-care, is just to
Mm.
check in with yourself sometimes, even if it's just 5 minutes, just sitting in the shower, just like, okay, like check in, remember, I think it's always important to find your why. Like, why am I here?
Mhm.
What purpose do I have? Why are people friends with me? What makes them light up when I walk into a room? And everyone's is going to be different, but I think it's always important to check in with yourself and
Mhm.
just go like, okay, like, am I still on the right track, or how can I just adjust, or you know maybe I didn't do really well on that, but what lessons can I take out of that?
Mm. What would you say? I know we only have a few minutes left, so I'm going to ask my closing questions, if you will. What would
Sure.
you say to people? Because I know there's people out here all over the place, and I talk to a lot of them too. To someone who's working in a place where they are unhappy, but they have to provide, they don't think their managers care, they feel like they're just a cog in the machine, and they're insignificant. What would you say to those folks that are in that situation?
I'd say my first bit of advice is talk to your manager,
Hmm.
because ask those questions. A lot of times I find myself, if someone has a disagreement with someone, asking them, have you talked to them?
Hmm.
And most of the time they'll say no. So, my first step, go to your manager and just say, hey, I'm unhappy because of this. you know how do I, and take responsibility for it, how do I overcome that? And if you have a really good manager, they, or even just a decent one, they may say like, hey, here's some feedback from you, and you may not agree with it, but listen to them
Hmm.
and try to understand where they're coming from too, and try to have that conversation. Well, here's where I'm coming from, here's where you're coming from, and I want to try to make this better. And a lot of times you'll break down
Hmm.
those walls with, I'm trying to make this better, I'm just not happy. And
Mhm.
usually they'll appreciate it.
Mhm.
Now, there will be times where you may have a really terrible manager who's like, I don't care.
Mhm.
And if your HR person, if you go to your HR person after that and they say the same thing, then it might be time to leave that business.
Mhm.
Maybe you just have to kind of put on your pants today and just go like, I'm gonna keep looking, I'm gonna keep trying, or reach out to people and see what I can find.
Mhm.
And let me tell you guys, use your recruiters, because they can
Mhm.
get you in the door at places, if you do find yourself needing that. But I think the first bit of advice is just have those conversations, because you really never know what they may have, their mentality here, but once you get one-on-one with them, you may find it's a different story.
Right, because again, just remembering that your managers are people too, right? And they have
Mm-hmm.
struggles and they also deal with things that are not fun and they have a life outside of work. So you never know what's going on.
Yeah,
What
and
and then
it's
I go
oh, go
ahead.
ahead. Oh, well, I was just gonna say, and it's, as an employee, it goes both ways. Like,
Mhm.
take that step up and just say, like, and I think it shows leadership too, to go,
Mhm.
I'm I'm trying to meet you halfway.
Yep.
I'm not just asking you to do something for me. I'm trying to meet you halfway.
Mhm.
Help me help you.
That's
Help.
really good.
And I think that's important as an employee. Take that stance.
That's really good. Right. We if we all were again, you said it earlier, right? We all want the same things. So if we can all make sure like what am I doing? What is my part to make sure we're moving the ball forward towards what we all want, right? Which we all
Yeah.
want to get along, we all want to be happy, we all want to enjoy the things we do. And then I guess the last question is probably for HR people, right? And folks that are working in the human capital space. What would you say to those folks who are, again, also dealing with leadership who doesn't want to change? They're seeing data and numbers and people leave, and they're just hearing, right? They're the point of contact for people that are frustrated and not heard. What would you say to those folks? Because you're in that seat and it's a unique, and I am not even in it, but I know it's a very challenging place to be at this time in the marketplace, especially in America. What would you say to those folks that are like, I'm trying to be an advocate for both, and this is really, really hard because some folks don't want to change?
Yeah. I think one, check in with yourself first.
Mm,
Make sure that you're okay mentally, because it is a tough road. And I will admit there are times where I'm like, why am I doing this?
mm,
Is this really the right fit for me? But I think the second thing is just, breathe and keep going and remember why you're
mm,
here and why you're doing what you're doing. Nothing historical or nothing amazing ever came like that. It never
mm.
did. People
That's a great
fought for
point.
that for a very long time, and we just have to keep pushing, and it's slow and steady wins the race. So, I say, yes, we have the numbers, we have the data, we're showing people are fighting back. And I think it's just taking those small moments, those small wins to, you know, to talk to your managers. My CEO and I, of course, do not always disagree on things, but I continue to include reminders in my emails. I continue to have those conversations and be consistent with those
Mm,
conversations. I think that is the key too, because if you say it enough times,
mm,
it eventually gets through.
mm,
And not as a hitting the wall every time, batting 1,000. It's
mhm,
subtle. Sometimes it takes that subtle just push,
mhm,
and continue. Everyone, I know it is really hard as a leader to sit there and say, so great example. We had the hurricane come through, and
mhm,
usually most businesses are, you're either here or you're not. And we thought, what if we just gave our employees the option? There's
mm,
no imminent threat necessarily here in South Carolina. We don't know what it's going to do. So we gave everyone the option. I gave them the brief of, here's what you do if you're home, here's what you do if you happen to be in the office, here's the safety information.
mm,
And it was weird. I remember driving home and going, that's crazy, I've never done that before.
mm,
Like, was it the right call? And thinking, like, this is what leadership, I think, kind of means. It's just that thinking outside of the box and going, how do I find a different way to solve this problem that I don't
mhm,
know how to solve?
mhm,
So keep coming up with ideas, keep innovating. That's what it means to be innovative. Sometimes
mhm,
it's just those little tiny tweaks that make the world of difference.
mhm,
And challenge yourselves as leaders, and check in with yourselves, but keep pushing. Like, we are going to get there. There are lots of us out there who do believe in people and do believe in the purpose of work it's changing, and do want to have a work revolution and make a difference, and we will get there all together. So just
mhm,
keep trying. Reach out to your managers, reach out to friends, have friends like Kyle that you can talk to, and continue to re-inspire yourself
mm,
with. And there are times you need help. Ask for help. It's okay to ask for help. Does not make you weak. Does not make you a bad leader or a bad manager or a bad employee. You're human.
mhm.
It's okay to ask help. And anyone who doesn't want to help you, you don't need them.
Yep. Talk about it. That's great. Yeah, I'll end and just remind anyone listening what Emily and I have said, and she said several times here, I think, remember your why and don't give up, right? Because we're all in this together. We all want the same thing. Empathy is key. Remember, right, when someone's not treating you well, there's a reason, right? They're not, most people don't wake up and go, I just want to be a bad person today, right? Or I just want to be a bad manager. I can't wait to be a bad manager, right? There's things going on. None of us are perfect. We are in this together. Emily, thanks for coming on here, but more importantly, thanks for what you do. Again, I do know that right? It's much easier to just not care about people and go through the motions, because that's the easier default to choose. But you've chosen not to do that, and that's why I have a lot of love for you and I appreciate you. So
No,
thank you for
thank you
doing what
so
you're
much,
doing.
Kyle.
And I am hopeful. I honestly am super hopeful. I do think the future is really bright. Obviously, there's going to be a few tough years probably, but I do think the workplace revolution, as you called it, I really like that. I do think we're on the cusp of a revolution, and I think the future is very bright for the workplace. And we just need people like you that are going to continue to love and lead and care for people and be an advocate for people on both sides of the equation. So I say all that just to say thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all you do. As an HR person, it's really important to partner with the people and the right programs in order to move the business forward. So, Kyle, thank you for all you do and for having me today. I really love our discussions, and it's just great to know that there are other people out there who believe the same thing and want the same outcome.
Yep. We're fighting the same way. We believe the same things and we want the same things. So whether we have different jobs or not, like the mission is the same, right? People matter, and we're going to fight for them no matter what. So I could keep going, but thanks again for being on here. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. We'll talk to you again soon. Everybody listening, thanks for listening. I appreciate it. Just remember, your why matters, you matter, and people are always the most important thing. Until next time, this has been another episode of Inside the Mirror podcast. We'll be back soon. Thanks again, Emily.
Thank you.
See you later.